in the studio by the Sun's defence editor, Jerome Starkey. Jerome, good to have you here. I mean, this is a story that really has gripped the world. Everybody's hoping and waiting and praying for this submersible somehow to be discovered, and I think lots of people were fastening on those noises coming from, they hope, the hull of the vehicle or the vessel, but the Rear Admiral there said he thought it could be any one of a number of things. He didn't think that 30 minutes in between hiatus and then the banging on the thing did denote that it might be these passengers.
Well, I mean, I think you're right, and I think it's partly because it's such this sort of emotional roller coaster. Because not only is it the Titanic, which has already captivated the world's imagination, but it's this small, dangerous, daring mission into the depths. And 1 minute we think it's almost no chance they're going to come back, and then the next moment, obviously, we've had this glimmer of hope from the news that they were banging, the sounds of the banging, and now ultimately, as the Rear Admiral rightly says, the focus is on locating the sub and finding it. Because that is step one. I mean, it's my understanding that banging on the side of a submarine at 30-minute intervals is actually I thought it was a standard. I'd been led to believe that is some sort of submariner's standard practice.
He said A, you use Morse code, and you wouldn't just bang, and B, you wouldn't do it if you were trying to conserve energy, and C, you wouldn't wait 30 minutes. He thought it would be every 3 minutes. He didn't, and obviously that's his absolute area of expertise. He thought the whole thing was unfortunately, he did use the word red herring. He thought maybe it was just not at all what we hope it would be.
Yeah, well, certainly the sounds weren't clear enough that they could be confident straight away. We know that the Canadians who picked them up with one of their submarine hunting aircraft, which had dropped a sonar buoy, passed that information to America to try and analyse it.
Yeah.
So, as you say, and the clock ticks down. I think the Rear Admiral also brought up a really important point, which is that why there don't appear to, I mean, it may be too soon to have for recriminations and analysis of what's gone wrong, but why was there not a remotely operated vehicle that could have launched a rescue immediately? We know that a British company based in Guernsey, which has used its drones to go down to that depth and has photographed the Titanic in extraordinary detail. They have equipment that not only can go down there, but has been down there. And because it's been down there, the people who operate it from this company know their way around that wreck very, very well. And they wanted to help. But what's interesting, a couple of things. Firstly is that OceanGate, the company that owns the Titan, didn't actually alert this Guernsey-based company, Magellan, for almost 24 hours. So precious time had been squandered there. And unfortunately, in the time since Monday when they were first alerted, Magellan haven't been able to get their kit from Guernsey to St. John's Port in Newfoundland in Canada, in order to set sail. I mean, it's a long journey. You've got to airlift it to Canada, then you've got to set sail some 370 miles across the North Atlantic. So, the distances involved, both horizontally and vertically, to reach this submarine are what's making it so difficult.
In your time covering these sorts of stories for The Sun, when I say these sorts of stories, you may say, Vanessa, there's never been a story like this. You've never covered anything like this, or have you? Have you ever been aware of these kind of excursion vessels making these perilous journeys, the enormous amounts of money that people aboard pay, £250,000 to go and have a quick look at the Titanic wreck and come back up again? And when you see the pictures of it, I don't know if it's I lack imagination or I'm just, far too pedestrian. But when I look and see what they see, I mean, it doesn't look all that to me. It just looks like a bit of broken hull and nothing all that exciting. You don't see glittering jewels and wonderful, kind of artifacts and the chandeliers and the china and the balustrades, do you? See a pretty weathered-looking, miserable-looking bit of hull. I don't really get the whole thing. Do you understand what it's about? And have you ever encountered anything like it before?
Well, on the first part, have I encountered things like this before? I mean, obviously, my focus is normally covering defence, and submarines are normally the domain of militaries.
Yes.
And so, of course, I mean, there have been situations. We know in 2000, the Russian submarine, the Kursk, that sank with the loss of everyone on board in the Barents Sea. But interesting to point out, I mean, that was in 103 metres of water, I think, incomparably shallow compared to what we're dealing here with the Titan. I mean, more recently, there was an Argentinian submarine that again tragically sank with the loss of all of the crew on board, and that was in significantly deeper water, 900 metres. I mean, what I know from speaking to military submariners is that, Britain does operate a world-leading sort of submarine rescue capability, but actually It's two elements. It's based up at the naval base in Clyde at Faslane in Scotland, but that only really operates to between 600 and 1,000 meters. So you're right. Excursions like this to the Titanic are exceptional, and I suppose it's probably because they're so exceptional that attracts those sorts of adventurers who want to, who want these experiences that they're prepared to pay huge money for that are relatively unique.
Does anybody, anyone that you're writing for, anybody commenting, anyone anywhere say, my gosh, they shouldn't have been doing this. This was a kind of daredevil trip. It was incredibly high risk. It was absolutely ludicrous, really, in every way. And now the kind of mass forces of the universe are trying their absolute best, maybe at their own risk to life and limb, to bring them back and save them. But really, it wasn't a responsible thing to have gone in the first place. It wasn't a good idea at all.
Well, I think ultimately they put themselves at risk. They were consenting adults. There is a rescue operation ongoing, and there may be, you could argue that perhaps other people even put at risk, but not really, because actually the vehicles that go down to rescue them will likely be remotely operated. So no other human beings, as far as I'm aware at the moment, will be going down to those depths. I mean, and ultimately these people were adventurers and explorers, and that instinct is a fundamental part of human nature. Not everybody has it, but many people do. And if they didn't have it, then many of the great achievements of the human race would not have happened. So I mean, I think whilst not everyone would want to plunge to the depths of the Atlantic to see a wreck, as romantic as enchanting as it may or may not be, certainly the Titanic captivates the public imagination more than many wrecks. But actually, there is something extraordinary about most shipwrecks when you witness them up close. I think these people have taken a decision, a dangerous decision, and obviously, as you said before, certainly I'm with those people praying against hope for a safe return.